Hey everyone, this is Michael from michaeldrewmusic.com. Today I've got a special guest who would like to introduce today's music theory topic. So this is Calvin. And Calvin, what are we going to be working on today? Calvin says today we're going to be learning about time signatures. So let's split the screen and let's break down the time signature. So what is a time signature? Well, on paper, a time signature would be the two numbers that are stacked on top of each other that follow the clef and the key signature in a piece of music. And you're only going to see them at the beginning of the piece. You'll notice that the clef and the key signature are at the beginning of each line in a piece of music. The time signature only appears at the beginning. So long as there's not a time signature change somewhere in the piece, you'll just see it at the beginning, and that's it. That's the timing for the entire song. Now, if you're watching this and you don't read music, if you're coming from a pop background where maybe you play a lot by ear, I still think it's worth learning about time signatures because every piece of music is in a time signature, whether you're reading it or not. So understanding how the counting works and how we think of rhythm in Western music, I think is still really important. And so give this video a shot, even if you don't read music. I think it's going to be worth the time. There are two questions that I frequently ask my students as it relates to various music theory topics. I will ask, what is it called? And what does it mean? We've learned what it's called, right? The two numbers are called the time signature. But the more important question, though, is what do they mean? Why do they matter? How do they help us play music? That's what we're going to get into now. Okay, so the top number is how many beats we have in one measure. Now, the measures are the spaces in between the bar lines in a piece of music. So we take the bar lines, we divide the music into little sections called measures. Each one of those sections receives the same amount of beats. And that's what the top number is telling us. Now, in theory, this number could be anything. You know, we could have 53 beats in a measure. But in reality, that's very unlikely and not very practical because the whole point of measures is to break music down into smaller sections, to break the beats down into smaller groups. So if we had something like 53 beats in a measure, we basically would have no measures. I mean, that would be such a large measure that it would defeat the purpose. So that is unlikely. Now, the bottom number tends to be a little bit harder to remember and harder to understand. The bottom number represents a kind of note. Now, what I want you to think about is that it stands for a fraction. Think about the different kinds of notes that we have in music. We have a whole note, half note, quarter note, eighth note, right? And that's what the bottom number represents. So if we see a 4 on the bottom, okay, that stands for the fraction 1/4. So here's how I think about it. I'll throw this up here on the screen. I imagine kind of a 1/4 on the bottom there, like the fraction 1/4. Okay, so that 1/4 is representing the quarter note. If we see a 1/8 on the bottom, that's representing the eighth note. If we see a 1/2, that's representing the half note, and so on. So the bottom number cannot be anything. It can't be a 5 because we don't have a fifth note. We don't have a fifth note. So it can be a 1, a 2, it can be a 4, an 8, a 16, 32 in theory, 64, etc. But almost always, I mean 99% of the time, it's going to be a 2, a 4, or an 8. That's almost always what you're going to see on the bottom there. You're going to see half note, quarter note, eighth note. Now, we know that those numbers represent a kind of note. What do they tell us about that kind of note? Well, they're telling us that that is the note that gets one beat. So if there's a 1/4 on the bottom, right? A quarter note on the bottom. That means that when we are tapping our foot to a song, when we are clapping along to a song, the pulse there is the quarter note. Okay, and if there's a 2 on the bottom, our pulse is the half note. And so that's what is determining the beat values then for all of the other notes as well. The half note is always going to get double what the quarter note gets. Okay, so if the quarter note gets 1, then the half note must get 2. However, if there's a 2 on the bottom, then the half note gets 1. The quarter note now gets 1/2, right? The quarter note's always going to be half of the half note. So it kind of sets the beat value actually for all of the notes, not just the note that's represented on bottom there. But like I said, almost always you're going to see a 2, a 4, or an 8, a half note, a quarter note, or an eighth note receiving one beat. There are two basic kinds of time signatures that we have in music. There's what's called simple time or simple meter and compound time or compound meter. Let's break those down for a moment. So simple time means that the note that is the pulse or the note that is the count or the beat can be evenly divided into two parts, okay, into halves. So you think about 4/4 time. Now 4/4 time, that is the best example of simple time. 4/4 time is called common time, very frequently in music. And if you ever see a piece of music that has a C written at the beginning where the time signature would be, that stands for common time. That means 4/4. If you see a C with a line through it, that's cut time. Okay, so 2/2, half of 4/4. And so 4/4 is definitely the most common time signature that we see in Western music. I don't know the percentage. I don't know what percentage of top songs in the last 50 years has been in 4/4, but certainly 4/4 is the most common. And that's why it's called common time. And so imagine a measure of 4/4. We have 4 quarter notes. Each of those quarter notes would be split evenly into 2 eighth notes, which can be split again into 4 16th notes, and so on. So we're having our notes. We basically, we're in groups of twos, essentially. Now, compound time is going to give the pulse to the dotted quarter note. Okay, now the dotted quarter note, that gets 3 eighth notes value. The most common example of compound time would be 6/8. Okay, so 6/8, 6 beats per measure, the eighth note receiving 1 beat. But again, it's essentially a pulse of 3 eighth notes is the way that we understand that. You've got 6 eighth notes, and your feel is going to be like this. It's going to be like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're grouping in threes now instead of in twos like we were in simple time. So let's go ahead and contrast simple time and compound time here for a moment. Here's a theory question for you. What is the difference between 3/4 time and 6/8 time? Because if you think about it, don't those have the same amount of beats in them? All right, if you think about 3/4 time, 3 beats per measure, the quarter note gets 1 beat. Okay, if there are 3 beats or 3 quarter notes per measure, split each of those in half, and you end up with 6 eighth notes. If you take 6/8 time, 6 beats per measure, the eighth note gets 1 beat. You once again have 6 eighth notes in the measure. Those two different time signatures do in fact have the same amount of eighth notes in the measure. But the difference would be in how it's written and also in how you feel it or how the pulse works itself out in music. So let's take a look at that. Let's listen to those two differences, okay? So if we take 3/4 time, again, the pulse is going to be the quarter note. So you've got 3 quarter notes, which would be just 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, now if we clap eighth notes, we'd have this 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and, right? Okay, so there would be eighth notes in 3/4. That's how those are going to feel. In 6/8, remember the feel is the dotted quarter notes or groups of 3 eighth notes now. We're grouping the eighth notes in groups of 3 instead of in groups of 2. So in 6/8, we're going to have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, now listen to those two back to back. Okay, I'm going to clap eighth notes in 3/4 and then eighth notes in 6/8 so you can hear the difference. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you can hear the difference there. The difference is in pulse, the difference is in feel, and the difference is in writing, as you can see on the screen. It's going to be groups of 3 versus groups of 2. That's simple time and compound time. One final word about music theory topics like time signatures. It is true that you can develop good rhythm by ear. Absolutely. There are a lot of people that can clap in time with a song, that can tap their foot in time with a song, who don't do music at all. They're not even musicians. They're just from listening to music over the years, hearing music on the radio or whatever, they've just developed a natural sense of rhythm. That is absolutely true. Where I have benefited the most from my own knowledge of time signatures, rhythms, has been when I run into trickier time signatures. So an example would be once you have a piece that's in 5/4, or you have a piece in 7/4, or you have a piece that changes meters throughout, right? Maybe it doesn't stay in 4/4. It starts in 4 and then it goes to other things. That would be an example of where being able to count and understanding what's going on there has really benefited me. My big thing is I don't want to guess. I don't want to be unsure of how to play a particular rhythm. I want to be certain. And that's my hope for these videos. I hope that this will take the guesswork out of it for you. I hope that this will help to clarify time signatures and hopefully help you with certainty count through tricky time signatures when they come your way. If you found this video to be helpful, please be sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. That does help me out. And leave some comments. I always enjoy hearing from you. As always, have a wonderful time making music. I'll see you next time. Boonch, 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 boonch. Galvin, 4/4.